What I'm going to talk about is something that sounds pretty boring. It's the Jones Act. Hell, it even has a boring name. The Jones Act mandates that any ship going between US ports has to be American made, American staffed, registered under the American flag, and be owned at least 75% by an American company. You may not think much about commercial shipping, but it affects everything, and the Jones Act makes it terrible. The Jones Act refers to Section 27 of the Merchant Marine Act. It was supposedly done to enhance our national security by ensuring that we have a vibrant maritime fleet. Really though, it was just a scheme for Representative Wesley Jones to make money. We know this because after the Jones Act passed, Alaska could no longer rely on Canadian ships for their goods. This gave the state of Washington a virtual monopoly on commercial shipping to Alaska. Guess who represented the state of Washington? Wesley Jones. The Jones Act has remained in effect for 99 years. It does occasionally get waived whenever there's a natural disaster. President Trump recently waived the Jones Act after Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico. This waiver only lasted 6 months, and the Jones Act is currently back in effect. So here's why the Jones Act is horrible. It dramatically increases the cost of shipping between American ports. In fact, it costs roughly $3,000 to send a 24-foot container from the mainland US to Puerto Rico, but it only costs $1,500 to send that same container to the Dominican Republic. It's actually more expensive to ship products from Texas to the East Coast than it is to ship products from Europe to the East Coast. So because of that, fewer companies use ships to do interstate commerce, which means that fewer ships are built. Over time, the number of Jones Act ships has dwindled, and the few that remain are way too old to be considered safe to use. Also, since companies aren't using ships, that means they use trucks to do interstate commerce. This adds to traffic congestion at coastal cities, and let me repeat that. This law makes traffic worse. If you live in a coastal city and have a long, soul-grinding commute to work, you have the Jones Act to thank for that. Forcing companies to rely on inland transportation also increases pollution. One of the most devastating effects of the Jones Act is the destruction of Puerto Rico's economy. Because it's, an island, Puerto Rico imports 84% of its food. In order to get products from the mainland United States, Puerto Rico has to use Jones Act ships, which raises the cost of consumer goods. So even though Puerto Ricans make less money, they have to pay higher prices for products. This has severely limited Puerto Rico's ability to pay back its debts, which in turn keeps it in an almost permanent economic decline. This is something the Jones Act does to our own territory, to our own citizens. It overprices the poor. Defenders of the Jones Act say that it's necessary for national security, that it creates a fleet of ships that can project American power across the globe. The problem is these ships can't really be converted to military use. When US forces were deployed to Saudi Arabia during Desert Shield and Desert Storm, only one of the ships they used were Jones Act compliant. The rest were just too old to be reliable. If anything, the Jones Act makes us less safe, because when natural disasters hit, we have to beg the president to allow foreign aid. Finally, the Jones Act reverses one of the primary aims of the US Constitution: free trade between the states. Under the Articles of Confederation, states would erect trade barriers between themselves, which economically harmed their own citizens. When the Constitution was adopted, one of the powers it gave to the federal government was to regulate interstate commerce. The purpose of this was to open trade between the states. The Jones Act does the opposite. It inflates the price of shipping between American ports, forcing a trade war on ourselves. While it may help line the pockets of the few remaining shipbuilding companies, the Jones Act undoubtedly harms everyone else.